Hey, I'm James Roy, and as always, my lovely wife, Courtney, the most
Hello.
beautiful woman ever, is right here with me. And this is the Noise Date Night Edition, a podcast where we talk about our weekly date night movie selections. This week being The Last Duel, a solid movie, I thought. But let's do the rundown of what we're going to get into today. So, for small talk this week, we went to our dear friend Brenda's Dirty 30 birthday party.
Shout out to Brenda.
Yeah, shout out to Brenda. And we also went to the pumpkin patch with our church youth, or not youth group. Wow, young adults. we're not the youth.
No, we're not.
And we also
Candid.
went and saw
Shout out to Candid.
Shout out to Candid.
Yeah.
And we also saw The Last Duel. So let's just go straight away. So Brenda's birthday party. How was that?
It was so much fun.
No, yeah,
Yeah, just meeting new people, seeing Brenda,
exactly.
be really excited and do some line dancing,
Yeah, line dancing, awesome.
That was fun.
It was great. The amount of times I got
We
asked
weren't very good.
if I knew how to do line dancing. They're like,
I think people assumed because you were from Texas that you'd be good at line dancing.
You're from Texas. You can line dance, right?
Yeah, the thing about line dancing is that all of these dances are like pre-taught. I feel like everyone just comes in knowing how to do these pre-choreographed dances, and if you just don't know, then you just don't join the floor.
Well, I mean, I'll repeat what I said the entire night, and it's my firm stance. I'll tell anyone who will listen to me say it. Line dancing is for women who can't be led, and prime example, my sister.
Shout out to your sister.
Shout out to my sister. So women who have trouble following in dancing tend to be better at line dancing.
I'm just not good at dancing, period. So,
babe, you're great at dancing. At least when we dance, I think we're good.
Okay.
We're not gonna win.
At
like
one
Dancing
point,
with
we
the
just kind of
Stars.
like did our own couple dance, and then we weren't meshing with everybody else since we weren't
She's
doing
like,
the same
look
thing.
out! You're gonna look out! I'm like, okay, let's go.
It was more of a hazard to be on the dance floor.
We're gonna cause somebody to get hurt.
Mhm.
But so we did that. We also this weekend went to a pumpkin patch,
That was
which
fun.
it was alright. I think is at Brea United Methodist, right? Or Brea Methodist Church? I don't know.
Yeah, right off the.
There's all kinds of. I feel
freeway.
like it was more geared at kids, but it was still a good time to kind of like hang out with friends.
Yeah, I would say like the venue is more for little children, but it's fun to just hang out with your peers.
Yeah, exactly. So I
Mhm.
mean, I had a good time hanging out with George. Shout out to George.
And then we went to
And-
Islands and had some
And
cheese
Joe
fries.
and Joe and
Mhm.
Kristen and Sanj and
Zach.
Zach, all of them.
T.
I saved Zach for last,
Mm-hmm.
and T was there. T and George, but
Yeah, it was
No.
fun.
thought it was a good time.
Mhm.
So this week we watched The Last Duel. So let's get into that. The Last Duel is a movie featuring Matt Damon,
Mhm.
Ben Affleck, Jodie Comer, who was in Free Guy, the first
Mhm.
movie we reviewed for this podcast. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck have the Good Will Hunting connection,
Mhm.
among other things. I'm pretty sure they're in a few movies together, but I couldn't name any other ones off the top of my head.
Yeah,
And then outside of that, not very many actors of note that I saw, unless you knew
you're
some.
missing like the biggest one,
The biggest one.
Adam Driver.
Oh, yeah,
Mm.
Adam Driver.
There you go.
Sometimes he slips my mind because Star Wars. I don't know.
I'm pretty
No.
sure he was the only one you were excited to see in this
No,
movie.
yeah, no, it was Adam Driver. I thought I said his name and then I didn't, and so Adam Driver's in there. Pretty star-studded cast.
Mm-hmm.
The movie cost $100 million.
Yeah.
Directed by Ridley Scott.
Mm-hmm.
The bad news is that it only pulled. I think international box office was 4.8 and the national box office was 1.9. So not a very good showing.
No.
A lot of the news surrounding it is that this movie was targeted at audiences over the age of 35, and a lot of older people are still a little skittish about going out during COVID.
Mhm.
There's also the fact that Halloween Kills released with Jamie Lee Curtis. That one pulled $50 million in the box
And
office.
it is Halloween
It's Halloween
time, so
and outside of that, I mean, There's so many factors that could affect it. Maybe poor marketing. I don't know. I saw the preview for this movie in every movie we went to since Free Guy.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I was hype about it. I think a lot of people. You were telling me that you thought a lot of people thought this was Gladiator and were kind of disappointed in it.
Mm.
But the critical reviews and the general consensus from the public is that it was a good movie.
Yeah.
It just did not fare well in the box office. Not a lot of people went to see it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we'll see what the negative reviews say later on in the show. But
it'll be interesting.
I don't know. From my perspective, I thought it was a solid movie. It was what I expected it to be. So I don't. What would you think?
Yeah, I think I definitely was, wanting more action because I love action movies. But I think overall, like the storyline was really good and it was very interesting. And I think that the way they did it was really well.
No, yeah, it was well told. So before we carry on any further, I'll issue the spoiler alert here. We're kind of trying to spin a little bit of a different way to recount the plot, maybe a little less specific, a little more to the point, talking about the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So you might be able to get away with listening to the podcast and not getting the movie spoiled too much. Especially in this case, I feel like this movie is just kind of like I watched the preview and I knew what it was about. It's just about how they tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
But this is your spoiler alert. If you really just don't want any information about the movie, tune out now. But I'll be recounting the plot. We're gonna do a quick run through, and this one is really easy. It's divided up pretty concisely. So we set the scene. They start out by showing the build up to the duel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a scene where what was it from the other guys where David Ershawn's like, I think to tell the story, I need to start at the end and then loop back around to the beginning and then tell the story intermittently, going back and forth, foreshadowing, and I'm shut up, stop. But so they start at the end and kind of get the build up to the duel. They show the first charge, and then right as they collide, they go to the first act. So this movie's kind of split up a couple different ways. There's 3 different perspectives that are told, and then we get to see the duel. So first perspective is told from the perspective of Jean de Carouge, who is played by Matt Damon, with a sick mullet, and just we see his perspective, and so the story from his perspective portrays a man who is well respected, finds a woman and marries her, is a good husband, and goes out of his own way to be an incredible husband and stand up for her. That's what we get. So the general story is that it shows a little buildup of his life, and then his wife gets raped, and then it shows how he handles that. And so from his perspective, he kind of shows himself as a good friend to Adam Driver's character, who is Jacques Legris. There's a little bit of conflict. There's a suit, and then but from Matt Damon's perspective, he's the good guy in this one. Yeah, that's how it's told. And then we shift. The next story that's told is from the perspective of Jacques Legris, played by Adam Driver. And what we get from his perspective is that he's a guy who was kind to Jean de Carouge because they were friends, and he felt bad for him. Yeah. And Ben Affleck's character, who is kind of the overlord of their area, those squires, is like, dude, you need to let it go. This dude's not. He's just he's no fun. I don't like having him around, and you should just be better off in life if you just forgot about him, right? Yeah. And so it shows a picture where he's a nice guy, and then eventually gets sued by Le Carouge when he marries Jodie Comer's character Marguerite over some land that was promised in a dowry. And so from his perspective, he was a nice guy to Le Carouge, or de Carouge, and then he got sued, and everything changed. In both perspectives, they kind of make amends. And then this is the first time Adam Driver's character meets Marguerite. Yep. And sparks fly in his perspective. From Matt Damon's perspective, nothing is shown there. He just doesn't really see it. Yeah. But so they step through, and this is the first time. So she gets depicted like after the fact. Matt Damon rolls up, and she's like, "I've been raped," right? But then we get to the first perspective where we kind of get to see it. So it's depicted twice. I didn't feel like it was too graphic, but it's definitely a hard watch. So
trigger warning for sure.
Trigger warning if you've dealt with that. might avoid this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's a strong topic, not easy for everyone to handle.
Yeah.
I know that I was at least a little bit uncomfortable in the theater.
It was a little uncomfortable for sure,
especially to see it twice. But
mm-hmm.
they portray him entering the house. He's portrayed as like being like, I'm in love with you. I've always loved you, and she's
like slightly just obsessed with her.
And from his perspective, she's not as denying of it.
Mm-hmm.
But like from every perspective that it's shown, he raped her. It wasn't like shown as him thinking. He just didn't think it was wrong, but he very obviously shows it as him raping her.
Yes,
it was forced against consent.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get through, and they lead all the way up to the hearing, where what's his face? De Carouge skips up to the king directly and asks for a duel to the death. And so De Carouge's perspective leaps off in the courtroom, where he drops the glove, drops the gauntlet. It's kind of like, let's duel, let God decide. And so Adam Driver's character, Legris, gets to that point. He goes up, adamantly denies it, picks up the glove and says, okay, let's duel.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get to the third perspective, which is Marguerite de Carouge. Now, she's not always de Carouge, but that's like how she's referred to throughout the movie. Because for the bulk of it, we see it from her perspective as being married.
Mm-hmm.
So her perspective, it's interesting. So at the beginning of each perspective, they show like a screen with text that's like this, chapter 1 from, De Carouge's perspective, chapter 2 from Legris' perspective. And then we get to chapter 3 and it says from Marguerite's perspective, the truth from Marguerite's perspective. And then everything fades except for the truth, which is to imply, or at least very blatantly say, that this is the true recountance of this story.
Yes.
So she steps through. It kind of, I think it covers a lot of typical tropes. For example, at one point at the party where Legris first meets her, she's talking with her best friend, and her best friend says, well, I kind of wish my husband would die so that I could give Legris some action. Where she's like, Legris cute, but like, I don't think I trust him.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's kind of used against her later. And so we see this scene depicted again. And it's very evident that in her perspective, she's more frantic, more adamantly resistant. But I mean, both scenes she resisted. It's very obvious.
Definitely not consent.
And it was
no consent.
But it was only slightly more brutal. I feel like both were equally brutal.
Yeah, obviously, like anybody in that situation, it's going to be brutal. But on his perspective, he was more like gentler in his mind than her recountance. He was obviously a lot more like aggressive.
And so she steps through, and then now in this part of the court scene, it shows the lead up where she tells her husband, and her husband grabs her by the neck and is like, "Are you lying to me?" Which now, to be fair, in his recountance of it, he asked her if she was lying. She said no, and then he just kind of was all for it.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, well, I'll fight to the death for you. Whereas in this one, he's more like, I'm hesitant to believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
But now that these accusations are out, I have to defend my honor, kind of thing.
It was more about him than her.
Yeah. The scene in the preview where it's like, you're not fighting for my life. You are risking my life to defend your honor. So they step through all of that, and then we get to the court scene. She gets hit with a lot of, I guess, what was common thinking at the time. It's like, she gets asked, did you enjoy it? Do you enjoy having sex with your husband? It's not even possible to conceive unless you've enjoyed it. All kinds of stuff that was just kind of like, okay, dude, like really? It showed like the lack of understanding at the time. And I think a lot of that understanding, I think, carries forward to today. But I mean, I don't think that it's really talked about enough. So, I mean, me and Courtney having conversations after it, I think I showed a general lack of understanding of the anatomy in that perspective. I just don't have it. I don't know. I've never really had to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's like men being in the conversation about that, how that tends to carry out, but like, back in the 1300s. So, either way, they step through, and she gets a humiliating line of questioning, steps through it gracefully, I guess. I mean, I feel like she just kind of got through it the way she had to. The gauntlet gets dropped, and after hearing every perspective on the story, we get to see the duel. And so I felt like it could have gone either way. They charged at each other. They go at it pretty hard. Eventually get knocked off the horses, and it looks like at points it could go either way. Eventually, De Carouge comes out victorious, and a sigh of relief hits the entire audience. It's like the whole kingdom's there to watch this duel, and Marguerite's like, oh, thank goodness.
Well, yeah, because her life is
made it out alive.
Spared.
So they eventually show she's pregnant when the duel happens.
Yeah.
And the timeline kind of fits like when it happens. So they don't really give you much in that regard. They just kind of show her and her kid.
Yeah.
And then they go to that typical, based on a true story text scene where they're kind of like, De Carouge lived on to fight until he died in the Crusades a couple years later, and Marguerite sat over the estate for the rest of her life and lived a cush life. I mean, that was pretty much it. There wasn't a whole lot of detail. They never, I don't think they really have confirmation of like what happened.
They didn't really allude to him being the child being Adam Driver's character or Matt Damon's, but
no, they didn't.
They just kind of assumed it was Matt Damon's, I guess, but
I guess. No, yeah. And
that was a little bit foggy.
Yeah. So I guess the big thing for me is looking back at it, I thought that Matt Damon, I thought he was all right. I think a lot of people reading articles thought his character was the best played. I thought Jodie Comer and Adam Driver were
hands down.
Clearly
they were way better
carrying this movie. No, it wasn't Matt Damon. It was Ben Affleck's character was given a lot of praise, which is weird. Because
I thought he was the weakest. Like,
yeah, he would just did what he could with his
screen time. He wasn't very believable as a Frenchman.
Yeah, no.
His accent was terrible.
No. Well, and also that's the risk you run when you make like a movie that's set in France, but like
it's like, are they like
spoken in English?
Yeah, with British accents.
But whenever
in
they
France,
whenever
or are
they
like supposed to have French English accents, I have no idea.
Whenever they sang songs or anything like that, it was always in French, but like the dialogue was in English, and I was kind of like, okay, what are we getting at here?
Like Jodie Comer's accent was definitely like a British accent.
No, yeah,
all and then Matt Damon's, I'm not really sure what his was supposed to be.
I don't know what they were going for, accent-wise. If you were looking for a truly French movie, you
might want to skip that.
Don't go to this one. But the other thing to talk about is this movie covers like a 17-year time span.
Yeah, it starts in long. It's a long period to cover for a movie.
It was 1370 to 1386, which is when the duel happened.
Yeah,
and so they kind of run through it. It's a 2.5 hour movie, and I feel like the way the story was told necessitated that, but they easily could have just given one perspective in more detail and made this like an hour and a half, hour and 45-minute movie.
Absolutely.
So
they could have shown like some events from one perspective that we didn't need to re-see in someone else's perspective. Like, I don't think we needed to re-see the perspective of the opening, like the second scene where Matt Damon's character is kind of like, leading a charge against his orders. And then I don't think we needed to see that charge twice over.
No, exactly.
Whereas I think we could have saw it from Matt Damon's perspective, him leading that charge as the best option. And then we could have seen from Adam Driver's perspective that scene where he does vouch for him to show that he's his friend.
Exactly.
There's some like editing like things I would have taken out, or I don't know, screenplay writing that rewritten a few of those things to be a little bit more condensed.
Yeah, but this movie was definitely one like there's somewhere you see the star power and the script just wasn't written for it. I feel like at this point the script was like good enough that the actors could,
who wrote the script
could make it happen. It was Ben and Matt.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck and Matt Damon wrote the script.
Yeah.
And then Ridley Scott directed. But either way, I definitely felt like the actors made the movie better than what it could have been. If it had been a bunch of no names, it wouldn't have been a good movie.
No, I mean, they weren't terrible. For me, the whole accents just really throw me off.
Yeah, but so from like an analytical perspective, let's get a little bit more on the visuals.
Yeah, so cinematography, I thought that was great. The coloring was awesome. The views and the scenes and the shots, gorgeous.
The only thing I had to say about it was that there was points where it was so dark in the theater that I was like, this is really poorly done. Like I don't know. That was my big thing, but like the visuals were good.
It is like a dark movie, like the lighting wise, because you're in like those like castle type homes.
Well, exactly.
There's no like natural lighting in those places anyway, so they took it a little too literal.
I mean, I've seen other movies compensate for that better. Is my big
for
thing,
sure.
but I definitely thought it was a visually appealing movie.
It was pretty.
Was there anything more specifically that stuck out to you in terms of like how it was shot?
I just love all the wide shots. I mean, when you're shooting in a place like that, I mean, you can't really go wrong with just like all the wide shots of getting all the scenery and all that established. Like, I thought they did a good job with that. As you feel like Matt Damon's version, the beginning, run of everything was a little bit more choppier than I would have wanted. The transitions weren't as like seamless as the rest of the movie. So that was kind of like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
It was a little harder to get into because for me that was a little distracting.
No, I feel that. But yeah, I overall really appealing and aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
It fit
the look
time,
of it.
the
Yeah.
timepiece.
The music was great.
No, yeah.
But for me, yeah, the acting was good, but the accents like threw me sometimes. I'm like, that was like a Bostonian that just came out. Like,
I was like,
am I watching flashbacks?
Am I watching Good Will Hunting or The Last Duel? I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you like them apples? But so scoring. So before we score it ourselves, let's get into a segment we've added last week. We've done it to some form for most of the weeks, but I don't, what would we call it? The negative. So let's look at the negative. Let's look at all the 1-star reviews.
Let's look at the negative Nancy's. That's what I like to call it.
The negative Nancy's. A new segment here on the Noise Date Night where we look at the most negative reviews of the movie.
Yeah, one of them said it was ridiculous. A lot of people didn't like how it depicted men because in the end, both of them were kind of both the problem, right? But yeah. I mean, at the same time, it's like, I do think that was pretty accurate for that era. Like women definitely didn't have a voice back then, like at all, like a say in anything. So they were being married off for money and land. And I mean, that's just like what the timepiece was. I don't think it necessarily had to do with our culture today, which is what people were trying to say, but that's just my opinion. Some people said feels false from the start. Yeah. Like the beginning with Ben Affleck and his, someone said Matt Damon and Ben Affleck just can't do period pieces. I am with you on that. I say Ben needs to stick with rom-coms and Matt can stick with action and dramas, but that's about it. Biopics, maybe. I don't know. Overrated. Yeah, I think the most complaint was their accent and just like the, demasculating the men. But joyless, slog, and major trigger warnings. Yeah, I do say trigger warning for sure.
100%.
Yeah. I think watching it twice is super cringy. Like the second time I was just like crying and like looking at James and like, I don't want to watch this scene. Like it really breaks my heart.
I'm just going to close my eyes.
Yeah. Ridley made a stinker. Oh, and I think people definitely, because he did Gladiator, they just assumed it was going to be Gladiator. So it said from the director who brought you Gladiator brings you trash. I'm a huge Gladiator fan. That was one of my first movies I ever saw that was like cinematic genius and just pure magic. So I'm with them on that one.
Yeah.
Damon, Driver, and Affleck. A big disappointing.
No, but what did so let's look at what everyone had to say about it just generally. So IMDb and
yeah, I mean
Rotten
overall
Tomatoes.
it got a 7.7 with the users, so people seem to like it overall. I think again the previews seemed to be a little misleading, so people were upset with that, but they did like just the story and how it was told because it was a little bit different with the three perspectives.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they liked that aspect. Now, as far as critics goes, yeah, I mean, it has a 68 score, which is not bad. Some people really liked it. Again, they loved the three storylines combined. They thought it looked gorgeous. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Jodie Comer got nominated for something because I thought she did amazing.
They're saying that there's some Oscar nominations are in line for it.
Contenders, yeah. I mean, and they could. It is a gorgeous movie, so maybe cinematography for sure.
Yeah.
Adam Driver did a good job. Like he played the villain really, really well.
And Adam Driver's
so believable.
Always consistently putting out good stuff.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal actor.
He needs to give his agent a raise for getting him all those roles.
And he does the work, so he deserves it. But him playing he was bilingual because he's French and he could speak English and different languages. Latin.
His accent was the best.
He basically spoke in Latin a lot, which was pretty impressive. And so I thought that was good. His accent was great. Yeah, you did not like him in the movie, so I think anyone who's playing a villain and you don't like them does a good job.
Yeah, 100%.
No, yeah. I mean, it was pretty well received with critics, and
What
the
about
general public liked it.
what about the Metascore?
Oh, it's a 68.
68. Is that yellow or green?
That's
It's
green.
green.
So that's
Okay.
good, but it's like mixed. And then with Rotten Tomatoes, they got an 86. So, I mean,
That's solid.
which is pretty good.
That's up there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's score it ourselves. Now, me and Courtney did discuss this on the way out of the theater, so we both already know what we think about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you want to go ahead and describe what are your thoughts on it? What's your score?
Out of a 1 through 7, I did a 5 because I think the pacing of it was a little slow, and I think that some scenes could have been combined a little bit more, I don't know, creatively, and I don't think we needed to watch 2 rape scenes. So, solid
Exactly.
5.
I could have given it a 4.5. I went with a 5. I felt like it was good. There was like every single flaw that I had with it wasn't something that was worth taking off the extra half point.
No.
So
I mean, it was better than Cry Macho.
yeah. I mean, we've only had 1 0 film, and it's Cry Macho.
Cry
so
Macho. Don't watch it.
Don't watch it.
Or watch it.
or do. I mean, I don't know. You probably find like
I definitely took a long nap in it.
You could definitely find a low budget, like no name Netflix original.
I mean, even Hallmark has better movies than Cry Macho.
You could watch Candace Cameron Bure fall in love with some guy from a small town on a business trip from the
same
city.
Guy that was in the last one that she was in. Yes, just reprising in a different city with a different name and a different job, but overall the same plot line.
What are you, a stock trader, or what is it this time?
I would watch those 20 times over before watching Cry Macho again.
No doubt, but let's go ahead and talk about what we're gonna watch next week.
All right.
So next week we'll be watching Dune. It's a remake of the 1984. It's based off of a book.
Mm-hmm.
Now in this film we will have Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya. Our connection to previous films we've watched, Reminiscence had Rebecca Ferguson in it.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this movie is better than Reminiscence. Our earliest word on it, since I've actually looked at the internet this time, NPR said the story sprawls, the pacing stalls. So I think a lot of people are correlating that since Halloween Kills had such huge success in the box office, that this movie will follow suit, or that they're trying to make a correlation between that. There's also been a lot of talk about the comparisons between this storyline and Islam, and how this movie's kind of watering down those comparisons. So there's a lot to be said about it. I vaguely remember seeing the first one, so I'm not like super in tune with what the story's about. I feel like it's people coming in from the outside and trying to take over, and I don't know.
To like go to some planet and then
it's like
fight them.
Weird dreams where Timothée Chalamet is seeing Zendaya, which that checks. I don't know.
I think it's definitely gonna be more of like a blockbuster hit rather than like controversial.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like that's kind of what they're more going towards, or going for, anyways.
I want to say
like
this movie's already been released in other box offices around the world, which is weird because it says the box office it's already made 117 million, but maybe that number's weird. That
they must have had like a release somewhere else, but
probably. Which usually most movies release here first, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not like super in tune with the international box office, so don't quote me on it. Who knows? But it looks like it's a pretty solid movie. I couldn't possibly be worse than the first one, just judging based on the previews. The first one was soups, cringe.
Oh, it did the film festival circuit. That's why. So it premiered at film festivals in September.
Oh, okay.
So that's how so many people have seen it already in Canada, France, and Italy.
All right.
And then it also has been released in other countries, like in September. So I guess it's just coming to the United States.
Well, to give you some idea of how it's going to be received, I turned to Courtney just a minute ago and said, we're going to watch Dune next week. Is that cool with you? And she said, oh, yeah, I'm really excited. I can't wait to see Dune. So
I didn't say that.
Something like that.
I'm just kidding.
What?
Yeah, I mean, I do like sci-fi thrillers, action movies. So hopefully it's a good one. If not, we'll let you know. If it's not, don't waste your time. If it's not.
Our trend right now is that if Courtney's excited to see it, it's been a good movie. Critically, to say the very least. Now, The Last Duel did not do well in the box office, but I don't think that Dune will face that issue. But I guess it's about that time in our show, guys. Thanks for tuning in and listening to us.
Yes.
Please like, comment, and subscribe, and listen wherever you get your podcast at. This has been Courtney.
Hi.
And
Bye.
I have been James Roy. And this was the Noise Date Night Edition. Thanks for listening.